Hello, 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 and welcome to Unique Leaders Live. I'm Megan DiMartino, and it is Friday, my favorite day of the week. And not because it's Friday and the weekend, but because it's Unique Leaders Live. It is my joy to bring to you each week amazing individuals. And I say amazing from the standpoint of their hearts, their stories, their journeys, and what they bring to the world. Today is no exception. And hold on a second. I'm sorry, Tamra. I'm going to have to start again. Can you bring her back in? That was such a good intro, too.
Do I just end broadcast?
Hold on.
The phone rang here, so it's going to be just a minute. We're going to bring you back in a second.
No worries.
I am so sorry.
Do you want me to end the broadcast or we leave it there and they'll just cut that out?
Yeah, we're just going to cut it out.
But I don't know where I was.
So do we start?
Well, we're
over?
starting over completely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so end
No,
broadcast.
no, just leave it the way it is.
Okay.
And we're just going to start from the beginning. So leave her out.
Okay. Do you take Megan out too?
Yeah, and take.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Unique Leaders Live. I'm Megan DiMartino, and it is Friday, my favorite day of the week, and not because it's Friday and the weekend, but because of Unique Leaders Live. Unique Leaders Live is a time of information, a time to join together with unique leaders that have a story that we are bringing to you. These stories are their heart, their journeys, and I know you will see yourself in them. This began over a year ago during a very difficult time in our world, and I just knew it was time to bring people together. And with that, today's story is no exception. This is my dear friend, Tamra Andress, who is an amazing woman who has accomplished much, but her heart is for the Lord and her heart is for service. And I can't wait for you to see her heart, hear her heart, experience her heart, and know that you too are part of this heart. And that's the other piece of Unique Leaders Live, that we all say, I couldn't do this. I'm not that accomplished. But Tamra has a story. People say, the success leaves clues. I don't like clues. I like the whole story. That way you can hear that essence. Unique Leaders, as I said, started last year. We've done over a year of broadcasting. This is on YouTube as well as on all the podcasting platforms. So today, if you could share this out to every social media platform that you're on, go to YouTube, subscribe, and then next Tuesday, it'll be up on all the podcasting platforms. So go to iTunes and subscribe. I truly, truly would appreciate it because it will bring these stories not only again and again to you, but also to people that you love, care about, and know that these will truly, truly help. So without further ado, I'd like to bring to you my dear friend, Tamra.
Hello.
Hello,
Thanks for
hello.
having me. What an intro.
Well, it's all true, my dear. It's all
Love
true. It's all
Thank you.
true.
I'm excited. I think there were so many parts. I'm like, ooh, I could talk about this. And then you say something else. I'm like, ooh, I could talk about this. So wherever this conversation goes, I'm so looking forward to serving your community and love that you show up in this way, because you're right. Everybody has a story. And my favorite part about stories is that you're sharing the inner light of how you've created the brightness, right, that we all are today. And sometimes our lights go out. And it's important to understand how we get to turn them back on. And I think that's the variation between a clue and just you see and bear witness to a light versus the actual understanding of how it works.
Great
So.
that I knew you would understand that clearly, clearly, but it is that turning, I love that, Tamra, turning on the light. So let's go back to young Tamra. Where did you grow up? A little bit about your DNA, as I say, where you began and what brought you to today. Those
Sure.
beginning Tamras.
Yeah, so I was born and raised and still currently reside in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And my dad was military. And so they came over from California, and they got rooted into an awesome community. Early Tamra was no different than now, full speed all the time. My mom and dad called me Bam Bam. I was really chunky when I was born, so I would roll and couldn't walk or crawl, and eventually ended up getting asthma. And so my parents put me into gymnastics very early, and I've been basically cartwheeling ever since. I love to move. I love to shake, love to dance, all the above. But yeah, my journey started with a lot of fitness background, a lot of health and well-being background. Also leadership was something I was really keen to and interested in all the way from second grade when I got plugged into student government in school. And so many of my teachers would just like press into me and give me insight and also take me by the hand to make sure that I was being developed in that way. I was, president of my elementary school, president of my middle school, in student government in a lot of different realms, 9th through 12th grade. And I just really was interested in that piece of being not in the limelight, but being able to resource my gifts and talents in a way that was able to create momentum. I knew that I could affect change in not only my voice, but also in my activation of. And that was all of the things in addition to the gymnastics. I mean, I was going to gymnastics 20-ish hours a week. So it was full time in addition to school and my leadership exposures. And at the same time, that was everything that was happening in the light, right? And what happens in the dark behind the scenes is what's going on in your head, what's going on in your heart and festering in your mind. And I was suppressing a lot, suppressing the limelight, suppressing being put on a pedestal, suppressing the expectations of achievement, of glory, of always having the picture perfect everything. And that started so young that I didn't really at some points even understand that I was coping or suppressing in the dark, because it felt like what is true and what is not, what causes emotion and what doesn't. And it was interesting, you brought up that I had posted yesterday in regards to this limelight experience, right? Like hitting bestseller in multitudes of categories as you release a book, and there's conferences happening. And so I'm on stage, and it's really no different than what it was like then. But there's one pivotal point, and the pivotal point is my surrender. Mm-hmm. Surrender of who I am rather than who I'm expected to be, and understanding the difference between being and doing. And so I hope that this is where we can move the conversation, because I think it's a really critical point.
Absolutely. Well, as we do that, you know, as you're sharing your younger years and the evolution of that, two things struck me. Number one, that I speak to many, many people, and most people do not live where they started. Most people do not. Mm-hmm. And so that's an interesting fact, that you're there, you're grounded, you're rooted in that community. And number two, that leadership dynamic and quality in you began at such an early age. And that, like you said, though, there's always that darker underside, that underbelly that we are, because that's the human element, that's the human dynamic.
Yeah.
But one question, were your parents aware that you had a conflict? And I ask this, Tamra, as we go into what you just shared, is that I ask this from the standpoint, I have two daughters, and I was a high achiever, and of kind of a flip of your story, and kind of brought them along the ride with me. And how much of that, but I didn't, from a perception, feel that there was any dark side to it, so to speak. But as I speak to them as adults, everyone has their own darker side. So my question is, did your parents have an understanding that you were struggling?
They didn't. No, not at all. I was always told since I was little, I'm still told this today, but in different contexts because I receive it differently. Like, you're a light when you walk into the room, or your smile is so contagious. And so I thought and felt as if I was anything else, if I didn't show up in the expectation of, this is Tamra, she's always happy and cheerful and go-getter and all of these things, that I would not please from that people pleasing perspective, but I also wouldn't be me if I wasn't that box persona.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't even until my late 20s, I was 29, that even my parents had any inclination that anything was happening on the inside. And to be fully transparent, I didn't really know. I knew that there was like a battle between flesh and heart, and truth and light and dark, however you want to say it, like the little red devil on one side and the angel on the other. I recognized it, but nobody had ever created language around what that meant, or that it was normal, or that depression and anxiety paralleled to joy and life. I didn't know these things. And so I just thought, this is me. And why do I have to struggle in this regard? And I'll just put on the mask, no different than the mask from Jim Carrey's movie. I'll just put it on when I go out because that's what they expect me to look like. That's how they expect me to come. And then when I'm by myself, I'll deal with whatever these emotions are. And so when I was 29, I found out through a series of events, but specifically in therapy and a book that my therapist had given me. I rejected therapy a lot, and we can talk about that. It was mainly because I wasn't able to be truthful with myself in private. So how are you ever able to be truthful with someone in public? So as a few sessions in, she gave me this book that I didn't think was for me. I'm like, this doesn't even have any connotation to what I'm walking through. And about chapter 3, I fell to the floor in shock and awe and fear of a memory that had suppressed so much since I was about 3 years old. And it was a sexual trauma experience with a child who had a mental handicap, who was the size of a man. He was about 13 at the time, and silenced me into these experiences. And then at some point, shamefully, I carried it out, because how do you say, is it his fault or is it my fault? And I knew no different for a multitude of situations and years, and then stumbled into pornography when I was about 6, and into cyber sex when I was about 12, and the list goes on. And so I'm 29 years old. I have this recollection of memory, and immediately it floods to the connection points of all of these dark moments. And I couldn't look myself in the mirror. I couldn't comprehend, how am I all of these things in the light and all of these things in the dark? Who am I actually really? And is it even possible that anybody, my husband included at the time, and my 1 and 2-year-old, how could they love me? And so that's where I spiraled out into suicidal ideation and things like that.
So the book, what is the title of that book?
It's called No Stones. And I don't even have the title, the author's name at the top of my tongue. I can see exactly what the cover looks like, but No Stones, the concept was sexual addiction.
And what a burden to carry, and how many people, millions, have not necessarily the exact same experience as you, but something that alters their journey, alters their path, and that they carry that burden, and you carry it privately without even speaking to your mother or whomever. And what led you to, at 29 or maybe a little before, to say you needed to speak to someone? And like you said, what you felt it wasn't working because you weren't being introspective or truthful with yourself. How can you be with someone else? So how did you know to do that? Because many people don't, Tamra. They do not.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I didn't have a personal self-awareness moment. It was actually it was a conviction and also an accusation that led me to that. And I remember pulling in to my driveway. My little girl had barely been weaned from nursing and was waddling at this point. So she was about 10 months old. She started walking really early. And I had been working at this point. I was an entrepreneur. I'm still an entrepreneur. And that's really all career path I'd really known at that point. But I was working about 70 hours a week, 60, 70 hours a week. And I would come home, and I saw her and I couldn't wait to hold her and pick her up and give her a kiss. And she, instead of coming towards me like you would expect, and my toddler did, she turned around and walked the other way towards her dad. And I remember feeling really isolated in that moment, to the point where I didn't even feel connection to them. I wanted to just go inside and continue to be alone, even though I had just been with people all day long. And I found out a couple of days later that my husband had compiled a bunch of little white lies into an understanding that something else is happening. This isn't the woman that I married. She's not the woman of integrity that I keep calling her out to be. And we need to face a conversation. And so when I did that, and I felt as if I had a forced situation. And I think a lot of times people can be pushed into a corner and they have choices. I had choices. I had choices to leave. I had choices to say, you don't know what you're talking about. I had things to, I can take everything and go. It would be easier often to stay in the dark. And I didn't want that anymore, because when I pulled into the driveway, I had this understanding of my tombstone. And I knew at the end of the day, my tombstone is not going to say entrepreneur on it. Whose does? It says wife, it says friend, it says mother, it says sister, it says daughter, child of God, perhaps. And yet none of those things felt worthy of being etched into any stone, even though those were the things as a little girl I had hoped and prayed and wanted your whole life. But I felt void within motherhood. I felt void within being a wife. And it's ultimately because I was void in who I was and my greatest calling as being a daughter of the King.
You know, what you shared about the 29 brought back to mind. And as you're speaking further here, when I was 29, I went to therapy myself. And I'll never forget, I was leaving, and her office finished one session. And she looked at me and she said, you know, you're very lucky. And I looked at her like, lady, I just paid you, $40 and I don't have that. And didn't you just listen to my story?
Lucky. Yeah, exactly.
Didn't you listen to my story? And I looked at her like, lucky? And she read my face and she said, you're very young. Most people come here when they're 49, 59, and don't have their life ahead. You have your life ahead. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, and I've had that own recognition, and I jokingly say, like, I had a quarter life crisis rather than the midlife crisis, right? And I'm so grateful for that, because the majority of all of the people that I serve from a personal and professional development realm, that's their age. They're in their 40s and 50s, and they want something that I have already not attained, because I believe in the fact that we're always becoming, and there's more to my story, and there's more to the identity of God that I seek. But it's this light. And instead of walking into a room and feeling as if I had to put on a show, I now get to walk into a room and be. And that being, which is that innate eternal light, that innate internal peace and joy that are fruits of the Spirit that have grown in my life because of obedience and surrender, are now an attraction quality, not to me, not to anything Tamra is, anything Tamra has done, any part of my story, but to the glory of the Creator who created me to proceed, or to have Him within me so that He could proceed into the room.
Would you repeat a sentence you said about, and I'm not going to quote it properly, but that we are His, not ours, meaning that, because so many people perceive that they are the identity of the world, but we are not of this world, we're in this world. But as you said, so just start from that place and go now into where you are, because you are always becoming. I'm always becoming. We're all always becoming. And so many people do not understand that. They just don't.
Yeah, I think it's the element of grace, and it's on the juxtaposition of what society says, right? Society says that there is an American dream. Society says that there is success. Society says on a magazine or in a movie, this is what, as a woman, we're supposed to look like, be like, feel like, talk like. And that's an identity that's being cultivated by lies, a ton of lies. And it's putting a suppression over women, and it has for so long, even within the church, right? The identity that we're not supposed to speak. Well, in the garden, He never said, Eve, be quiet, right? In fact, he wanted to hear from her, and he made her with curation to be a helpmate. And a helpmate is also a voice. And actually, helpmate, Azer, is actually discussed in the Bible and describing Jesus over 33 times. And so Jesus himself is who we are, and there is no separation of man versus woman. And so identity is something we think we're supposed to be and become. And yet identity is just a component of the evolution of self based on the character of God. And so God is steadfast, but when he created us with a mission. He created us with a plan. And who I was when I was born is not the who I am I'll be when I go to heaven and sit at the right hand of the Father. And the reason is no different than Jesus himself. There's a cultivation process that happens. And there's two lenses to that cultivation process, either allowing the world, the enemy, Satan, secular, whatever word you want to use, to be the curation of yourself that is a fictitious being, or to stand within the identity of the Father, which is a place of grace, which is a place of peace, which is a place of becoming and sharpening. It's sometimes harder, right, to feel like you're standing within the will of God, because it feels like secular culture is just like, go with the flow, like eventually you'll become. And that is actually disobedient to the will of God, because there are not rules and regulations to religion. I believe in a relationship, but when I'm in true relationship, even just with myself, or let's use my spouse as an example, relationship takes communication, it takes integrity, it takes removing the veil. And that's what my relationship with God has been, and how I've transcended from worrying, people pleasing, feeling in a sense of expectation to anyone other than my Father, right? My kids want to please me. They want to show me when they've drawn something amazing at school. They want to tell me when they got a sticker on the calendar because they did something fantastic, or they got to help someone at school. They want to tell me, not because they need the approval of my love, but because they get showered in praises in the addition of my love. And that's what it feels like when I get to come to the Father at the end of the day in a robe of white, rather than the altar exchange that had to happen multiple times and still happens, but multiple times, versus feeling like I'm living in the dark.
But all of the personal connection words, trust is such an integral piece to all of that, because again, we have to understand, and that's with the relationship with the Father, with Jesus, with your husband, with friends. It's trusting that you can be your authentic you, and that you can forge on to your dreams, goals, and aspirations.
100%.
That it is trust.
Yeah. And I think that's an element that people have to cultivate within themselves. So often, even when you're little, right, you're put into an environment, and I'm thinking specifically of my daughter who's 6 now, but at the time, people kept blanketing her with this understanding that she was shy, right? They would call her shy right out. They go, oh, she's so shy, she'll warm up. And it bothered me, because I'm like, first off, you can't call her shy. You don't even know her. Like, you're a stranger at this point. So don't call someone until they've allowed you to open themselves up to see who they truly are. But also you're putting a label on my child, and they have yet to become, right? They've yet to wave their hand and say, this is who I am. And so we started changing language very early within our children's lives to free them up from any of these shackles that are created. And nobody meant badly by it. They're just, just saying what culture does. They want to put us in a label. They want to know what your title is. What do you do is the first question people ask, rather than who do you be? I've shifted that language since I came into knowing who God was and what my purpose here on light in the world is. And it's not about what do you do, because oftentimes what people do is not who they are.
Amen.
And so I've been shifting that to, what are you most passionate about? And it throws people for a curveball every single time, because nobody asks. Nobody asks the kid, what do you want to be when they grow up? Or that's exactly what they ask. They don't ask them, what are they passionate about right now? Because that's the component of identity that will evolve with them, rather than feeling like, oh, you're getting accolades because you say you want to be a doctor, definitely be a doctor, lawyer, or one of those things. That's not who everyone is meant to be. And so slowly but surely we become the mirror of the world, rather than the mirror of God the Father, in the image of being able to see eye to eye with him. We don't recognize our sense of self because somebody else has told us for so long who we are.
That's very powerful what you just said there. The mirror of the world. And if you visualize a mirror, and then you can go into the skinny mirror, the fat mirror,
Yeah.
the distorted mirror, the funhouse
good.
mirror, and it's a distortion of what the world says you are.
Mhm.
And it's going within and being and becoming. That is the title of your book. Share with our guests a bit about, the evolution of that. Obviously, it's your journey, but the full title and how that began, and a little bit about what's going on right now with it.
Sure. So it's called Always Becoming: Sex, Shame, and Love. And it's talking through, of course, some of these story pieces that I'm telling you now, some even more in detail. And it's helping people unlock what happened and transpired when I came to that point of shift, into that point of identity, so that I can help other people do the same thing. And I have done that also through my podcast, the Fit in Faith podcast. And it's been a journey of recognizing alignment. And what does alignment actually mean? A lot of people tell us about balance. And because I was a gymnast for so long, I lived my life with this desire of balance. Okay, if I can live in the light long enough, it's okay if I'm in the dark because I'm balanced, right? But at some point that falls off kilter. And alignment, which was the new phraseology and the new understanding of self, mental health for the first time in my life, physical health, rather than looking at it through the lens of the mirror. I've always been fit because of gymnastics, but I was actually vainly fit and also had so many body image issues on what the expectation of myself was as a woman. And so I was constantly trying to fit into this mirror. Emotional stability and understanding myself outside of ego, but actually self-awareness. How do you feel? Why do you feel this way? And recognizing that God gifted us emotions with intention. If I cannot be emotionally sound, it's really hard for me to serve, especially as a wife, a mother, a friend, and even more so within my purpose, which I feel like is even greater than that. And that's in the service of others through mission-driven leaders in the marketplace. And so it's a book about that becoming and how for other people to unlock it. I actually take them through what you would know as a fitness journey. So from the warm up all the way to the cool down, we talk about setting your intention, we talk about hydration, and we talk about detox. And what does that mean? Not from a diet mentality, not from a cultural mentality, but from a full mind, body, soul integration. So things like minimalism and how I ended up letting go based on the tear down and renovation of our home, letting go of all of this material stuff, how I went through this practice of fashion and letting go of not shopping anymore, and the addictions that come along with societal expectations, and a lot of addictions that people don't talk about as addiction, but are okay and societally norm, including things like alcohol, body image, all of that. And so at this point, the book it's been great. It came out last week officially, and it's hit #1 in 10 different categories on Amazon. I'm so grateful. And it's incredible to see from a sermons perspective. There's so many sermons inside of it. From a biography perspective, that memoir piece, but the leadership piece is a huge part of that too, because if we are not vertically aligned, if we can't understand that sense of identity and be in peace and trust with ourselves, we cannot go out and serve in any capacity. And we're called to serve. We're called to show up into the world in the way that God has created us, whether you're a teacher, a nurse, a firefighter, an entrepreneur, a CEO, a banker. It doesn't matter what you do. All of those things come down to human connection, heart to heart connection, no different than this conversation. But if we're distorting our hearts in private, how do you expect your heart to serve in public?
That's it right there. And the courage to not just now, because this has been evolving, but just to go within, start that journey, be transparent with yourself, honest with yourself, do the work. Because as you're speaking, my life is flashing, but also I'm thinking about others and how this book and you will help so many women and men to understand that it is not what the world is calling us to be. It is what the Lord is calling us to be, to go within, to do that work, and then, as the word says, to go out and touch and see, to bring that light out to the world. And you are truly doing that, Tamra. It's just really a treasure to really know you, and also to see your journey and see this evolve. And it's amazing, not amazing because that doesn't amaze me, but I can't wait to see. I was listening to Danelle Delgado this morning, and she was talking about that someone posed, what are you going to do, or where are you going to be next year?
Yeah, I loved that.
And I wrote it down. I'm going to do that exercise.
Yeah.
And here, I'm at a very different place of just numerical journeys around the sun, but we have so much alignment of our hearts of what our journeys are to be, because we are always becoming. So what do you see? Like we just said, we could go on and on about this. But what do you see next that our guests can see from this book and other things that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book will likely go on tour with me next year, but just in the next couple of weeks, I have several speaking opportunities and conferences that I'm hosting. I'll be at the Grow for God conference with Glenn, who you've been a part of his community for so long. And my intent is to continue to serve. So I do personal and professional development. And one of my favorite things, which I talk about in the book as well, is this concept of living a life on purpose and in play. And so we do international retreats for women, which are so incredible, that are not necessarily professionally driven. But I've found anytime that somebody gets personally aligned, their professional life flourishes. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it's identifying their purpose within their passions, which are personal, but also meant for the greater good of the kingdom. And so I love that. I'll be around the world with people and women. Next year, we're going to Costa Rica and the Dominican Republic. And I just want to continue to help businesses flourish. And in business, what is that? Heart business, it's head business, and it's also the hard work business that you see from an entrepreneurial lens. So seeing people step into their story and their message on purpose and with purpose, and creating those mission-driven leaders.
And I'm thinking about the hard work that it took to get to this place with writing a book. It is not easy, to publishing that book, to building the marketing of that book, to bringing it to number 1 in 10 categories. Not an easy task to do, but also the programs that you're doing, and then the speaking and writing. But what I'm also hearing is that all of this work is the foundation for going back, so to speak, because when I first met you, you shared about your retreats and things of that nature. So it makes my heart happy to see that then all of this work will be used for the next step.
And that's the peace and the grace of becoming. Is like a lot of people, they have this plan, and my plan could shift at any given point if I am willing and in that postured heart of conviction of, God, where would you lead me? Right. And so I was having an amazing conversation yesterday with David Waldy, who is additionally a fierce empathy coach in the marketplace, which I think is incredible. And I was telling him, oftentimes God has a light ahead of me. Like, I know I'm supposed to run towards him, and the path in which I get there is going to change and evolve. And I just have to stay fixated on him. The other things will come to fruition as I stay and remain obedient. And so rather than focusing on all of the closed doors, which is often what happens and why people get into that space of, I can't move forward. Which way do I go? Where is my calling? What is my purpose? It's less about identifying the one placement. I didn't achieve the American dream because I had a white picket fence and 2 kids and a hot husband, right? That wasn't it. There was more to the story. Mm-hmm. And so the evolution exists in the fact that he wants us to step into tomorrow. He wants us to step into it confidently, courageously, and blindly. That's what faith is. I don't know how it's going to look next year, but I partner with you that when I look back on my life a year from now, it's going to look drastically different, because it's going to be the new version of self. And I will not be sitting or doing any of the exact same things that I'm doing now, other than the identity of wife, mother, and child of God.
So with that said, because that is that foundation, that growth, and that evolution. But you touched on something earlier. And when you were speaking about how the world wants to put people in a box, in alignment, what are you said, what people ask, what are you going to be when you grow up? Well, I asked the same question to all my guests. And it really has a essence with 3 Feet from Gold, written by Sharon Lechter and Greg Reed, one of my favorite books. And I'm sure you're aware of it if you have not read it, but basically for our guests, it's a fiction essentially, and about Greg Reed's life. It's autobiographical, but it also starts out with a piece from years ago during the gold rush days. And this gentleman from the East Coast got gold fever and went west and bought his piece of property, started chiseling away at it, and became very discouraged. And as time went on, became more and more discouraged and ultimately gave up and sold his property to a local person. And that person dug in 3 feet struck gold.
Oh my gosh.
Hence 3 feet from gold. How many times do we give up?
Yeah.
We're so close, but we just say, it's not going to ever work. Well, Sharon, in this, as Sharon does, she created what she calls, and she uses this in most of her work, the success formula. And it is your passion plus talent times association times action plus faith equals success. Now, I'm not going to ask you all of those. I'm not, and you've shared most of them. But I ask everyone, what is your passion and what is your talent?
Really good. I love it. I was so curious. I was like, oh my gosh, where is this going to go? Oh, my passion. If I was to create one word as a symmetry of everything that I do, it would be play. It would be joyful play. And understanding that we're called to be childlike in the way that we live our life. And childlike play has a huge element of faith. And it's the jumping when it's too high. It's the going outside in the rain when it's too wet or too cold, barefoot with no jacket on. It's living life to the fullest intent and experiencing God's beauty in the process. So that would be my passion, is joyful play. And that can be done in business. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And so really helping people unlock that for themselves, head, heart, and within their handbag, right? The money piece. And then talent, my talent is probably activating joy within people. It's the fact that my presence, which is God's presence within me, and I don't have to wear that element anymore. I get to blame it all on God. He wants to take the blame when he comes into a room and people experience light or love or joy. It's not me having to carry that medallion, but getting to give him the glory in the process. So activating joy within others and giving them that curiosity of why don't I have that, or how can I get it? And then pointing them back to him.
Love it. Love it. And, my assistant Elizabeth and I, we marvel every week at everyone's response to that question.
I love that.
And but when I say marvel, Tamra, what I mean by that is it really goes back to the alignment of the person. It's so interesting. Often the person might say something that we didn't expect, but yet it is an alignment of who they are and whose they are. And it really is just a summation of this unique leader's life. It is really,
I feel you should do like a clip of all of them together. It could be so powerful to have that.
So yes, that's a very, we've just finished our year. It started out not being called Unique Leaders Live.
Yeah.
It was Hope and Possibilities, but we've done probably 55, 60 segments of Unique Leaders Live. So
Amazing.
That would be a great anniversary of this year to do that. That's
Agreed.
A great idea. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me and my guests, really to share your heart, your mission, your vision, and who you are. Because folks, in the text of this, you'll see where to reach Tamra, but because you will be blessed by following this woman, because she truly is a light and a sincere light, committed, as she said, with her passion and her talent to play. It's very obvious, very evident, and it's very infectious to be your friend and to be around you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Love you so much. Thank you for
being here.
And if you
just stay in the green room for a minute, I'll be right back.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Joining us today. Tamra and I truly, truly appreciate it. As I shared earlier, please share this out on all your social media. I know you've enjoyed this segment today where you're watching, but don't just put it under a bushel. Share it with everyone so that they can glean this information, this heart from this beautiful woman inside and out. Do go on YouTube. It is there. It is live. But subscribe to YouTube for the other Unique Leaders Live segments. I mentioned Sharon Lecter. She is there. Glenn Lundy, as Tamra mentioned. There are so many amazing people and their stories as well. Not just what they're doing today, but what brought them to the place they are to be a unique leader. Tamra mentioned her book. I shared a little bit about hope, and hope and possibilities has just been a foundation of my life throughout my life. So my book was published in December of 2019. It's Hope and Possibilities Just Over the Horizon. It's never too early or too late to create the life of your dreams. And it went to number 4, not 10. Wow. Number 4 number 1 in 4 categories, which I'm very proud of as well. And most importantly, January 4th, my mother's birthday. So there's a synergy there for sure. So again, go to megandimartino.com, put in your information. It is now an ebook there, but now you can go to Instagram and DM Hope, and you can also download the book. So reach it however you would like, but I know it will bless you. And like Tamra, there's other things up my sleeve that will be rolling out in the next few weeks. So I look forward to sharing those with you as well. So we will see you next Friday for another Unique Leaders Live, and be blessed.